Hey there folks, Aldershot here, and today we're going to take a look at The Last Dogma. It's developed by Sasha Darko, and it's on sale on Steam at the regular price, around $8 USD. Now I tried to do an impression on this a few times, and every time it kind of just turned out to be a big mess of complaints, let's just say. So I think I'm going to try and do more of a let's play approach to this game. Or maybe a let's not play, if you will. It's a bit of a mess, you know. I'm going to be honest with you guys straight off the bat here, but if you're curious to what it is, it's what some people might call a walking simulator, kind of similar to, say, I don't know, like Gone Home, or maybe Dear Esther, or as the game likes to compare itself to, maybe the Stanley Parable, okay? But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the game, of course. Let's just start with a chapter select. If we start game, we have to go through the tutorial, which is long and unskippable, so we're not going to do that. We're going to just jump into the first chapter. It's not that long of a game. First time playing it through, it took me, geez, less than an hour probably. But anyways, we're going to play through it. But as you can see, you know, it is a fairly open world anyways, right? But the first thing we're going to meet is this gentleman here, this little hobo buddy here. Let's see what he has to say. Now this game does handle conversations and dialogue very, very awkwardly, you know. You would expect to either mouse click him to start a conversation, or maybe hit E or something like that. I am using keyboard and mouse, by the way. But no, in this game there is a interaction, an interaction. I don't know what you would call it, system, where in the top left-hand corner you can see a bunch of logos or icons. When you get next to something that you can interact with, as you can see, it'll light up, right? So let's hit one. One will reveal what we think to ourselves about this current situation. An old man dressed in dirty rags. It looks like he lives here in the forest. Alright, good enough, good enough. Alright, well, let's see what number 3 does. Number 3 actually allows us to actually talk to Sid NPC, so let's do that. I see you're awake. My name is Jacob. You're a lucky man. All things considered, the villagers were actually going to check your pulse, but something else got their attention, and they ran to the village. I strongly advise you. I'm going to just pause right there for a second. Now, this game is developed by someone who I don't believe is native English speaker, so you know, I gotta give them a little bit of a break on that. But however, you're going to be releasing a product for sale. Going through proper spell checks and grammar checks is kind of expected. Now, I'm not really wanting to talk about this stuff because I'm pretty bad with spelling and grammar as well. However, I'm not selling you a product, right? And these guys are. So it's definitely something worth pointing out anyways. But as I was saying, I strongly advise you, don't go further this way. You're going to get yourself killed. Just consider yourself unbelievably lucky and run away from here while you have a chance. Now here we have an option to make some selection. We can either ignore him, or we can say, what the fuck was that? Who are these villagers and why did they try to kill me? Now the weird thing about this system here is I can't scroll wheel to make my selection. I can't use W or S to make my selection. I actually have to use the arrow keys, in which if you're using keyboard and mouse like I am, I have to lift my right hand to actually to make my selection. And as you can see, as I'm making my selection, my character is still moving for some reason. So it's a little bit clunky, it's a little bit clumsy. It's not exactly user-friendly, to say the least. But anyways, also I can't just make the selection by pressing E or the mouse button. Once again, I have to move my hand away from my mouse and actually hit the enter button to make my selection. So again, not the most user-friendly system in the world. I'm talking about the villagers nearby. It's the only populated place around. It's the homeland of the ancient Christian cults called Holy Intentions. They kidnap people and make sacrifices here for the sake of their beliefs. Everyone knows about it, but no one gives a shit. Corruption is the second name of this place, and I don't even remember the first one. International regulations you Americans care for don't mean anything here. So that sentence there international regulations you Americans care for don't mean anything here. That is, of course, a very, very awkwardly put together sentence. I'm expecting that's because of translation problems, but it does highlight my points previously about how unpolished the writing and grammar is in this game. So something to be aware of. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, if it's true, who are you and how come you didn't leave? How come you're still alive then? Alright, well this goes on for quite a bit, and to be honest, it doesn't really expand the character developments or the story all that much. The only purpose that this dialogue tree served is to tell me that I need to get a key from a building in the second floor, in which I've already played the game, so I already know that. I'm not going to bother reading all that, because I'll be honest, the writing is not that great in this game, so that's going to be my first complaint, right? Alright, well anyways, let's move on. Let's look for that second floor building so we can check out what that's all about. Alright, so on first impression, you know, if we're looking at everything from a distance, it doesn't look all that bad, right? It doesn't look all that bad. It's okay from a distance, but if you get close to certain things like this rock here, for example, well, first of all, they've definitely overdone it with the bloom. They definitely way overdone it with the bloom. But besides that, that could be considered subjective, alright? Some people might like the overuse of bloom, but something that's not subjective, something that's actually quite objectively flawed, is definitely some of the textures in this game. Look at this rock here. This is about as blurry of a texture that you can possibly find in any other game. In fact, the pixelation even turns up in the bump or normal mapping of the game. You can actually see the pixelation in how the light is refracting off of the material that this rock is built from, right? So, yeah, it's not the greatest quality when you look at this game under closer inspection, unfortunately. But anyways, let's move on. Let's move on. Alright, we found another NPC. Let's see what he has to say. Hey, meat, what are you laughing at? Come on, tell me. Ha 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 ha. I wonder why I'm trying to speak with some schizophrenic cannibal. Last time I checked, my name wasn't Clarice, so it does make some outside references in this game as well. And it's actually something I don't mind. It's a little bit self-aware. It breaks the fourth wall a little bit. It doesn't always do it as cohesively as, say, the Stanley Parable. It kind of does it all over the place as it feels like it wants to, I guess, but you know, it tries. I'll give it points for that, I guess. And by the way, Clarice is a reference to Silence of the Lambs. If you're unfamiliar, I definitely recommend watching that movie if you haven't already, but that's besides the point. We're not here to talk about movies here right now. But anyways, let's move on. Let's move on. We got some laughing going on here. Now, just checking out some of the textures. But anyways, let's go to the second floor and try and look for that key. Alright, so the jumping is a little bit off as well. There we go. There we go. Alright, so we're at the second floor. Here's the key. Like I said, I already played through the game, so I already know what to do. Alright, we can pick up some ammo. By the way, we have a gun, in which there's only like 3 cases in which you'll ever use it, right? And something else about the gun is you hit Q to bring it up, right? You would expect to hit Q to put it away. However, you actually have to once again, take your hand off your mouse and hit the backspace key in order to put away your gun. So I have no idea why the key settings are default to something like that. It's absolutely unintuitive. It's not very user-friendly. I don't know what's going through their heads, to be honest. And okay, we got this little object, I guess you can call it a puzzle here, the physics puzzle, but honestly, even the physics puzzle isn't all that good. I mean, just look at this. What am I supposed to, why is this in my way? Like, just for the sake of me having to push it out of my way? Like, if this is some sort of physics puzzle, it's not very brain teasy, if that's even a thing. But yeah, it's not the greatest. It's not the greatest here, right? We got another guy here. We're not even going to bother talking to these guys. The writing is not the greatest, to be completely honest. But anyways, let's move on. Let's move on. Alright, anyways. So, okay, here's another example of some fairly poor visual work in this game, aesthetic work. The textures on this truck, again, like, it's extremely blurry, extremely low resolution. You know, it absolutely makes no sense why the walls texture is a higher quality and a higher resolution than the props. That doesn't make any sense. when it comes to 3D modeling. I do have some 3D modeling experience, but something we learned is that when you're modeling a prop versus environmental things, you generally give more resolution to the props, you know, especially if it's going to be featured like this, right? And you look at the wheel, it's just, I don't know, it's just a big mess of pixelation, really. And you see a lot of like angles and stuff on the model. Is a pretty low poly model, which is not all that good, considering that on first impression the game looks fairly high quality as far as visuals. But then, of course, when you get close to it, you really start seeing a lot of the flaws, right? Which takes you out of the immersion process and all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, okay, well, we got some crazy religious stuff going on here.
God wants your meat.
You can actually talk to him. You can think to yourself about this guy. That's about it. Anyways, let's move on. Oh, God, we're getting shot. This is one of the few cases where we actually have to use our gun. Where is it coming from? Oh, we died. We died. Oh my. Alright, well anyways, we can quickly just get back there. By the way, you don't even have to talk to anybody. The dialogue and the conversations you have is all completely moot. The game in the tutorial even tells you that talking to people is pointless, as it doesn't affect the game or the story whatsoever. So, what little bit of gameplay that the game might have, you know, such as dialogue choices, the game itself tells you is completely pointless, you know. I don't know, maybe it's trying to make a point, maybe it's part of the humor that's supposed to be trying to portray. I don't know. Either way, it's I don't get it. It's not something that I've enjoyed so far, right? But anyways, moving on. As you can see, we came back to where we left off pretty quickly. It's pretty small game, to be honest. And there's the guy who shot us, so we're gonna shoot him in the distance because the AI is not the greatest. We'll just snipe him. Oh, we got reload. Here we go. The aiming's a little bit off here. It's not the greatest, as you can see. It's probably because we're from a distance, so I'll give the game a break on that. Oh, there we go. We took care of him. Bam. Bingo. So the game doesn't really have much replay either. He's always going to be standing here. There's no, like, random occurrences or anything like that. But, yeah, we're going to just keep moving. We're going to just keep moving. Like I said, this is really just kind of a walking simulator. So there's going to be a lot of this. There's going to be a lot of walking. There's going to be a lot of moving forward. Alright, we've arrived, and I believe this is going to be the end of the first part. So let's get into the next part here. Now, between each area, you're given this sort of pseudo-comic storyboards, if you will, right? So let's see what it says here. There was a hidden trapdoor and the key. I was the perfect fit for the keyhole. Below, I found something Jacob told me about. It was a sewer system full of blood and melted bones, a truly disgusting place with an unbearable smell. There was also a strange layout up ahead that caught my attention immediately. Alright, very good.
Hear my voice and come to me. I can only transmit my signal into the village, and it's not a coincidence that you found me at the right time.
So I just kind of ran right to the goal, and because I did that, the game didn't pace itself well enough to finish the dialogue itself. So the game has some pacing issues. Anyways, I'll let you listen to this as well.
Pragmatic prevaricator. Don't worry, this little fly won't kill you, but we only have a minute. Let me introduce myself. I'm Tricky Tricky, or Goody Goody. Actually, Goody Goody would be fine. I'm the good one, right? I mean, I'm feeding on positive emotions of people, after all. People would call me a demon, or God, but I don't know who I am. Still, I have a purpose and needs. I'm using a woman's voice. I hope you're comfortable with that. So, to the purpose. Just several hours ago, this filthy cult summoned the thing they wanted. After all these centuries, they awoke the most powerful negative source of power. I call him Troublemaker. Troublemaker is powering through the people's negative emotions and can be destroyed only when people stop to feel them. Both of us know that this is impossible. Everyone hates somebody, right? But if we make him weak, Now,
As you can see, this goes on for quite a while, and there's absolutely no interaction. I know I'm just interrupting the dialogue now, but this is not that interesting. It's not that enlightening, to be completely honest. I mean, I like the weird and the surreal. I really, really do. One of my favorite classical artists is Dali, or Salvador Dali, for God's sake, right? So I'm into this kind of surreal stuff, but this seems a little bit, I don't know, what's that word I'm looking for? For lack of better terminology, because my brain's kind of empty right now, it's a little bit try-hard, you know what I mean? And it's very overtly try-hard, right? Like, it's just so obvious. I mean, this part actually is kind of pretty, you know? It looks kind of cool, it's kind of interesting, but it's filled with uninteractive dialogue that's just not that interesting. You know, it just drones on, and there's nothing for the player to do. There's no gameplay value here whatsoever. Now, from a narrative standpoint, maybe, you know, it's just to fill in the story, and that's the developer's, you know, idea behind that scene. But as you saw, it took quite a while for it to finish, and she was just talking about a whole bunch of nonsense, really. Anyways, I'm gonna just move on. Feeling shivers down the spine with every tear that runs down. We're losing the war. Something, something, something. Goody, goody. Now inside your head. This demon is now your companion. You're okay.
So predictable. The troublemakers killed everyone here. You see, when I said that the cult summoned
Oh, here we are. We're in another scene now.
It's the things they did here. They were murdering people and worshipped for all the negative things in the world.
Alright, well, alright, let's move on.
But the followers of the true brainwashed me. They truly believed that someday.
Look at this glitchiness, guys.
Anyway,
Look at all these artifacting. And this isn't like the game's engine's fault. This isn't even really the game's fault itself, you know what I mean. It's the way the modelers have handled the pacing of these basically one-sided polys, right? And they just kind of placed it on a solid object, on a solid polygon. And you know, going back to what I know about 3D modeling, because I did do some in the past, this is what happens, right? You're supposed to texture this section of the wall with these sort of posters or graffiti if you don't want this to happen, right? This is kind of, you know, unfortunately, it's kind of lazy modeling, right? This is just pasted on poly faces on top of another poly face, and if you do that, it renders out like this, into this glitchy artifacting mess, right? Maybe this is the developer's first try at game development or 3D modeling or something like that, and maybe that explains it, but still, you know, they're charging money for this game, so these are things worth pointing out. Like, this is extremely, extremely glitchy, and whatever immersion this game's trying to build, this sort of artifacting completely takes the player out of it, right? Like, it's seen everywhere. Like, these one-sided poly faces just glued onto another poly, you know, like you can see it everywhere here. It's unfortunately lazy modeling. Like I said, this is supposed to be an actual texture, right? That's supposed to be used on the polygon, not another poly face with a texture on it glued on top to another polygon, right? This is what happens when you do that. A whole bunch of artifacting, and this is really hard to look at, to be completely honest, right? Anyways, let's move on. See, where are we supposed to go? Not like we can actually interact with any of these objects, you know? We can talk to this guy, but as the game in the tutorial told us already, it doesn't serve any purpose to talk to anybody, right? So I'm just not even going to bother. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm perfectly okay with these so-called walking simulator games. I'm perfectly okay with narrative-driven games. I absolutely am. In fact, I'm one of the few people, well, maybe not few people, I'm definitely one of the people that argue for these walking simulators. You know, I consider experimenting with game mechanics to be very, very important in the developments of new genres and new design philosophies for games. Experimentation is very, very important. Pushing against common conceptions in game design is very, very important. And I have a lot of respect for games and developers that can successfully do it. I'll let this narrator finish.
It's a troublemaker. Keep calm. Follow the shining bricks and avoid the tornadoes he created here. I feel he's busy with something right now and cannot use all the power he has.
But as I was saying, this game has no sense of cohesiveness, right? Like in the Stanley Parable, it wasn't weird just for the sake of being weird. All the weird elements linked up and hooked up together, they all explained a larger story. I'm sure this game is trying to do that as well, right? But I kind of feel like it's just weird for the sake of being weird, you know? There's no cohesion, right? Like I said, this game does break the fourth wall every now and then, but it's not in an interesting way like the Stanley Parable does, right? It just does it because it can. It has absolutely nothing to do with the overall story. It doesn't add to the gameplay. Like the Stanley Parable's lack of gameplay adds to its own gameplay in some weird way. It's all about breaking down player expectations and game mechanics and all that kind of stuff, right? Whereas this one is trying to tell a very kind of spiritual story. It does try to challenge the player's conception of game philosophies and expectations and all that stuff, but it's trying to do too much at once. It's trying to be an art game. It's trying to be weird. It's trying to be spiritual. It's trying to break fourth wall and challenge the player's notions of game design and all that stuff. But it just kind of fails on all front because it doesn't really link up all its elements cohesively. It's kind of a mess, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think these kind of weird scenes, you know, I think these are kind of cool, you know. I enjoyed seeing what each area brought and what the developers had in mind to show the player and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I like weird stuff, right? But I wish there was some cohesiveness to it. You know, none of this really make any sense. In fact, if you look on the Steam forums for this game, the developer actually had to make a forum post explaining the story itself. You know? It's like in the Stanley Parable, if you don't understand what's going on, that's okay. The whole weirdness, the whole like confusion of it, a lot of people actually enjoyed it. But in this one, it's just pointing me from one place to another. There's no, you know, interaction with the player. It's just narration after narration after narration in odd-looking scenes, and that's about it, really. You know, so I'm not really a fan of The Last Dogma, unfortunately. I feel like the game tried too hard without a cohesive goal in mind. It's just kind of a mess, and there's a lot of technical issues as well. And something I didn't get to show you guys, there are actual areas in the game where you can walk outside the map, fall through the map, and glitch out altogether, right? I found those areas. I didn't get to show you guys in this video, but trust me, it's there. So it's a technical mess. It's also a conceptual mess. It has some nice scenery from a distance, but when you get close to the actual models, you start seeing all the problems that comes with it, right? So that's basically The Last Dogma. I'm not going to actually continue any further. I don't want to actually show off the entire game. Even though I don't like the game, I do respect the effort that the developers put into it. So for those who do think that they will be interested in this game, I'm not going to finish the whole thing. I'll let you guys finish it yourself, so you can play it yourself and all that kind of stuff. But that's basically my thoughts on The Last Dogma. It turned out to be a full impression, not a let's play at all, so I guess I'll render it out as an impression. But that's basically it. Not really my favorite game of the year, let's just say, right? I mean, you can see a lot of effort put into it, okay? I'll give the developer that. And some of the scenery, like this place is kind of interesting looking, you know, from a distance. As long as you don't get too close to anything, because then problems will start showing up. Anyways, that's about it, guys. thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys listening to me complain for like, I don't know, 20 some odd minutes. But other than that, I do appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed this, you know, show me some love, like, share, fave, and comment. If you haven't already, subscribe, and I'll bring you lots more videos just like this. Thanks for watching, guys. All the shoutouts.